Hello, I'm Jeff, and welcome to another episode of Telequarium from the Alaska SeaLife Center. Of course, we aren't at the Alaska SeaLife Center today. I'm coming to you from my home here in Seward, Alaska. We are practicing physical distancing, like I hope all of you are, and doing our part to help slow the spread of the COVID-19 virus. It's Wednesday, and that means story time at the Telequarium. And today I'll be reading you If I Were a Whale by fellow Alaskan Shelley Gill with art by Eric Brooks. It's one of my children's favorites. Let's get started. If I could be anything, do you know what I'd be? I'd be a whale in the deep blue sea. Scooping up fishes and flipping my tails, I'd be a minke or beluga whale. Up in the Arctic with icebergs I'd play where the sun never sets on long summer days. If I were a pilot whale, underwater I'd fly, searching for squid in a green seaweed sky. I might be a gray whale with barnacles on my chin, or a sleek, slender fin whale. Think how fast I'd swim. Narwhals have tusks. Tusks might come in handy. Right whales sail with their tails. Wouldn't that be dandy? If I were a blue whale, across oceans I'd call. But if I were a beaked whale, you wouldn't hear me at all. I might be an orca and swim with my pod. I'd hunt the deep blue sea from Perth to Cape Cod. If I were a humpback, I'd sing songs every day off the coast of Hawaii in Puako Bay. I'd rest on the surface, rocking on the waves, and explore deep sea worlds of corals and caves. Spy hopping, twisting, and slapping my tail, I'd have fun every day if I were a whale.
Wasn't that a great book? I really love reading that book. There are two different groups of whales in the oceans. Those with teeth like you and me. These whales bite their food. And then there are baleen whales. And instead of hard teeth, baleen is like a soft fuzzy tooth that the whales use to help slurp up their food. Let's learn about the whales from our book today, and then what you can do to help conserve or to help save the whales in the wild. So our first whale that we learned about was the minke whale. It is a baleen whale, so it has those soft, fuzzy, slurping teeth. They live all around the world, and flipping their tail helps them jump or breach out of the water. Minke whales are also the smallest of the baleen whales. Then we learned about beluga whales. A beluga whale is a toothed whale. They live in the cold waters in the northern half of the earth. And people call them the canaries of the sea because they sing and chirp like birds. They're very vocal and communicate with each other in their groups. They're born a dark gray color, and then those baby belugas grow up and turn white as they get older. We then learned about pilot whales. Pilot whales are also a toothed whale. They can swim in huge pods of hundreds of pilot whales. And like many whales, pilot whales love to eat squid. They'll dive very deep and chase those squid to the surface, and their large groups help them eat a lot of those slippery squid. Next, we learned about gray whales. Gray whales are also a baleen whale like the minke whale, but they feed on the bottom, sifting through the mud for crustaceans like crabs and shrimp, or mollusks like snails and clams. Now, gray whales are some of the easiest whales to spot from shore, especially if you live on the west coast or are visiting the west coast of the United States. They will travel from Mexico all the way up here to Alaska, and they're hugging the coast. They're pretty close their whole way up. So there's lots of great spots to watch gray whales as they make their migration up and down the Pacific coast of the United States. Then we learned about fin whales, one of my favorite whales to see in the ocean. They're so big. They're the second largest whale, growing up to 85 feet long. That's almost the different distance from home plate to first base on a baseball diamond. It's huge. And when they come up and you see them in the wild, it seems like they're at the surface forever ever. Their backs are so long and thin. In fact, they're called the razorback whale sometimes. They're thought to be the fastest of the great whale species, and they're often seen swimming with other whales like humpbacks and blues. And next, we learned about maybe the most famous whale of all, I think the narwhal, or the unicorn of the sea. They're also a toothed whale, and in fact, their famous tusk, that tusk that comes out of their forehead makes them look like a unicorn, that is just a very long tooth that instead of growing down in their mouth actually grows out the front of their face like a big tusk. So think of a tusk like you would see on a wild boar or something. These are just long, slender teeth that stick straight out from their face. They live in the cold waters of the Arctic. And next, we learned about right whales sailing with their tails. And a lot of whales will do this. They'll just pop their tail out of the water for a long time. We're not really sure why they do this. It could be that they're actually sailing with it and letting the wind kind of pull them along underwater as they don't have to expend any energy that way. But we're not quite sure why they do. Right whales have enormous tails, or if it's a whale tail, we call it a fluke. They're a baleen whale, and their baleen can be very long, about 8 feet long, sometimes hanging down from the top of their mouths. They're one of the most endangered whales in the world, and they're closely related to their cousins, the bowhead whales, that live in the Arctic. Next, we met the mightiest whale, the blue whale, also a baleen whale. It is the largest animal to ever live on the earth. They're even bigger than any dinosaur that's ever lived. They're super long and very heavy. But what's maybe most impressive is our book said that you would hear a blue whale cross oceans calling. And that's almost true. Their call can be heard up to 500 miles. That's like the distance between Chicago and Atlanta. That's a long way to be able to hear someone shout out or sing. But the next whale we learned about is a very mysterious whale. In fact, I bet a lot of you have never even heard of beaked whales. I know that I think I was an adult before I ever even learned that there was something called a beaked whale. They look like giant dolphins. They're a toothed whale also. There's 22 different types of them, so there's not just one type of beaked whale. There's many different types. The one that's in the picture here, and I'm sorry, it's a fuzzy picture. We don't really have very many good pictures of beaked whales. They're so mysterious. They can grow these weird tusks that are a lot more like the tusk we could think of on a wild boar and not so much like the narwhal's tusk. But beaked whales are one of the deepest diving mammals on Earth, and they stay down so long and are so mysterious. We don't know much about them, but they've been recorded to stay underwater for over 2 hours. You could take a breath, watch an entire movie, and before you need to take your next breath. That's how long they can stay underwater. They're super deep divers, and like our friends the pilot whales that we learned about earlier, beaked whales love eating squid. Next, we learned about the orca whales, or also called the killer whales. Orca whales are a type of toothed whale. They hunt in groups known as pods, and they might be the most social of all the whales. They can stay with the same pod their entire lives. And like many of our homes or our families, their families or pods are run by the moms. The moms are in charge, and they're very social, hunting with that pod for years and years, and they can have huge ranges. They can range for thousands of miles hunting various things. Some of them eat fish, some of them eat marine mammals, but it doesn't seem like they will do both. It seems like they only like to eat one or the other. And finally, we learned about the humpback whale. It's also a baleen whale, and the humpback whale is a real conservation success story. And by conservation, we mean saving things for the future. And humpback whales were nearly hunted to extinction. But because we've taken steps to protect them in the wild, we've seen their numbers come back. And we're really happy to see the high level of humpback whale populations that we're seeing, at least in the North Pacific Ocean. And they have a really fun way of fishing. Sometimes they will blow a wall of bubbles to trap fish in and then swim up from below that wall of bubbles and scoop all the fish up at once. They're real common for us to see here in Alaska, but you can also see them if you visit in the wintertime to Hawaii. That's where they spend their winters. So humpback whales have a pretty good strategy. They swim to Hawaii in the summer or in the winter winter when it's cold up here, and they swim to Alaska in the summer where all of the food is in our rich northern waters. So before we go today, I wanted to let you know that you can also help whales and all the creatures of the sea by helping clean up trash where you find it. We'd like you to encourage you to recycle and, most importantly, reduce the amount of plastic that you use every day. Encourage your family and friends to try and reduce the single-use plastics in the products that they buy, and share this message with your friends too. Thanks again for joining us here on another episode of Telequarium. I hope you enjoyed Storytime today. We look forward to seeing you the next time we can down here in Seward at the Alaska SeaLife Center. We hope you're staying safe during this really trying time for our world. And we know that if you practice the social distancing that we're supposed to be doing, wash your hands, don't touch your face, listen to what the adults are telling you to do. That should keep us all safe. And remember to thank those folks who are helping us out right now, those folks who are working in critical jobs, like our doctors and nurses, our paramedics, the folks that work at the grocery store and the post office, all of those folks who are still having to go out there and do the things that help us live in this world. Do your part. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time on Telequarium.